So I just got out of The Mummy and it has way more humor than I was expecting. Now that's not really a good thing, but it is a thing, so let's talk about it. So The Mummy is the first movie in the new Dark Universe. If you're not familiar with this, essentially what they're trying to do is create a shared universe with a bunch of the classic Universal monsters like The Mummy, Frankenstein, Dracula, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, all in one shared universe, and this movie is kicking it off. It's also, of course, a retelling of the Mummy mythology. Here, Tom Cruise plays a modern Indiana Jones, if Indiana Jones was really, really selfish, who stumbles upon some Egyptian ruins in the middle of Mesopotamia, 1,000 miles from where they should be. During the investigation, the mummy, who is now played by a lady, Sofia Boutella, and our adventure begins. And this movie is a very weird mix of a lot of fun and a lot of not so fun at the same time. So let's talk about the good. Right off the bat, of course, Tom Cruise is incredibly watchable. He's a lot funnier in this than you would think from the trailers. The trailers kind of hide the humor in this movie for good and for bad, because Tom Cruise is as charismatic, likable, fun, and funny as ever while playing a very selfish character in this particular movie. There's also a lady lead in, and I thought the two of them worked pretty nicely together. I like the combination. I've heard some other reviewers aren't so crazy about her character. I don't see it. I thought they worked nicely, and she had a role that functioned in the story pretty well. Also, the horror elements of it and kind of the icky factor of it. I'm not a big icky guy, but the way it worked in this story, I thought it worked pretty nicely. It pushes its rating really hard, far into the PG-13 as far as you can go with it, I would imagine. And the ick and scares, I think they work pretty nicely, and there's some great set pieces with the mix action adventure with the horror. Then there's like a chase through the woods with these zombie-like creatures jumping onto a big truck thing, and it's very exciting. There's a lot of set pieces I really enjoyed in the movie, and likewise there's some mythology to all of it that's kind of intriguing, that keeps you captivated. And at no point in time while watching this movie was I bored at all. It was a fun time. But this movie has a lot of problems, and they really kind of boil down to kind of two things. First off, this movie had 7 screenwriters that worked on either the story, the screenplay, or producing, because they came up with like this brain trust to try and come up with a story and crack this dark universe. And this movie, you feel it all over the place. And that there was just competing visions as to how much of what you wanted it to be. So obviously it's the Mummy in a monster universe, so it has to be scary, but they want it to be big spectacle, so it needs to have big spectacle adventure set pieces. But then it's also a blockbuster, so you have to have humor, so it kind of appeals to a broad audience of people. And it really felt scene to scene like someone different wrote each scene. The story on the whole flowed together nicely, but the scenes would have different tones, and even the way the humor is done in them would be different scene to scene. And then there'd be like new elements of trying to build big story arcs with emotional elements to them that seemed to work in later into the story. And the way all of it kind of tied together didn't work nicely. And the biggest offense in all of this is this side character played by the guy, Nick from The New Girl, who is horrible. Not necessarily his performance, but the character himself feels like one screenwriter had like this idea like, oh man, this would be so fun if we go in this direction with it. And it does not work in this movie at all. It feels very much so like Tom Cruise, Ann Coulter, lead lady person, and Sofia Boutella in one movie, and then the side characters in this different movie, Russell Crowe's in a different movie altogether. Then real quick, if you don't want anything spoiled about this movie, I'm going to put spoiler alert on this. I have to talk about what they do with this side character, so skip ahead in 30 seconds. You can scrub through it and see it, but I'm going to go into spoilers real quick in 3, 2, 1. So with this side character, it doesn't feel right for the first 15 minutes. Like, he doesn't mesh well. The chemistry's not there with Tom Cruise. And then 15 minutes into the movie, he dies. Like, the character dies, and he's like bit by a mummy-infested bug. He dies and comes back as a zombie version of himself, which immediately like, what? Is this where this is going? And he gets killed off, and you're like, oh, I guess he's a small part in the movie. No, for the rest of the movie, the character keeps appearing to Tom Cruise in like fever dreams or something like that, with kind of where the other elements of the story go. And it's like plucky weird him being comedic sidekick like his character from The New Girl as a dead guy that are just in these dream sequence kind of things in the movie. It does not work at all. It is so out of place in this movie. It is horrible. I can't believe they left it in this movie. It's that bad. Then that's why I had to break from my normal non-spoilery stuff to say, because it is that bad. I had to bring it up. With all that said, let's get back to non-spoilers. All right, you can tune back in if you skipped over the spoiler part. We are good to go. So that's really kind of the big problem with it, the sense that there are 7 screenwriters with different kind of ideas of where all this wanted to go, how the humor worked in, and one horrible idea that felt very much like one guy was just writing this stuff, and it's out of place entirely with what else is going on. Like I said, Russell Crowe falls into that a little bit too. His character felt off to me. He's, of course, a brilliant actor. The character felt off like he was in a different movie. Second big problem with this movie is because they're trying to set up this universe. There's this whole plot line that they go off in the middle of the movie that just feels off. It feels like we're sidetracking, trying to do too much world building, spending too much time sidetracking the more interesting story so that we can build up and set things up for where everything's going in the future. And for me, it just felt an awful lot like if this movie was just Tom Cruise, Hollywood Ann Coulter, and Sofia Boutel's The Mummy, and that was our horror adventure with Tom Cruise's humor, this movie would have worked. I would have really enjoyed it a lot, and I'd highly recommend it. But it's not. There was too much world building, too much setting up sequels, and way too much humor that doesn't belong there with this side character that did not work at all. And for that reason, I can't really recommend it, but it's not boring, so I'll give it a 5.5 out of 10. It's in many ways a very well-made movie that had too many competing ideas, one horrible character that probably knocked it down a whole 1.5 for me, just how bad this side character is in this movie. But it's watchable. And if I'm being honest, I really can't. It's a movie you can get from Redbox. You won't hate it too much. If you go see it, it'll be a fun enough time, but a very frustrating time at the same time. Right now, it's set, I think, in the 20s or 30s on Rotten Tomatoes, and I get it. I get it how it got that low, because this side character is horrible, and it is pulled in so many directions, but a watchable mess of a movie, if you can call it that. But what about you? What did you think about this movie? Tell me down in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I'm guessing that this side character is going to be quite the point of discussion for a lot of people. But talking to some of my buddies like Tyler Tompkins, he liked it a lot more than I did, as well as Griffin from Men vs. Movies. He seemed to enjoy it a good bit. I seem to be the one that's the most negative on it. So some other people have some different opinions. I'd love to hear yours down in the comment section. If you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button up in the corner or down in the corner, wherever that button is. I don't know. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, do ranking videos. I got one coming up in just a couple days where I'm going to talk about every single theatrical Superman movie. I'd love it if you check it out. If you're a fan of Superman movies, I would love to hear your thoughts on it, because I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you. Join me in the comment section. Click that like button. Hey, and if you're willing, share the video for all of your friends and family to join the conversation. And as always, thank you so much for watching.